wonder how I got here. What did I do to get here? Somehow I made the wrong.
Welcome to Life in Focus with Bill Pint. Today's guests, Marcus and Immanuel. They're going to talk to us about education. Before we get started, let me read the scripture to you. It's in Psalms. Um, 127 verses 3 through 5. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. Okay, and the reason why I'm reading that scripture is because what happens is with our children, we are the ones that set them in their direction. We are the ones that set them on their course. We are the ones that are responsible for making sure that they go to where they're supposed to go. We are the ones that are responsible for making sure that they grow up in the Lord, that they know about the Lord, that we set their goals for them, and that we send them in the direction they should go. Now, this scripture is not only talks about the fact that we are responsible for making sure that the children go in the direction they're supposed to go, but it also tells us is that they liken our children to arrows. And if you look at the Bible has a lot of cliches in it, or a lot of symbolism about battle. When you talk about the full armor of God, it talks about the sword, the shield, it talks about the breastplate of righteousness, which is used to protect you, the helmet, which is another protection for your head. But when you talk about bow and arrows, a bow and arrow was only good for two things. One, the bow and arrow was used to hunt so that a person can feed his family. The second thing the bow and arrow was for was attacking one's enemies while they are far off, while they're away from you. In other words, not letting your enemy get close enough to where you have to use a sword. You strike them down with the bow and arrow. So in essence, what happens is that scripture means two things. One, you guide your children the way they're supposed to go. Teach them how they're supposed to be. You teach them about God because that's your responsibility. And also you set that direction for them. And the other thing it talks about is that child is your protection in your older age. That child is the one who God has put in place to make sure that you're okay when you get older. He's the one that will defend you, that will protect you, that will help you when you get older. He is that person. And the Bible tells us that if you raise that child right, you will never be put to shame, because that child will make sure you're not put to shame. So what we're talking about today is how do you prepare your child so that that child can grow up and make a living, and make a good living, so that they can provide for themselves, provide for their families, and also provide for you while you're in your old age. So today's guest, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself, and let's start with you, Immanuel. Who are you?
My name is Immanuel. I went to Central Michigan. I graduated in 2023. I graduated with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering.
Okay. And Mark?
Yes. And my name is Marcus. I went to MIT. I graduated back in 2021. Then I went off to I graduated a degree in mechanical engineering. And then I went to get my master's I graduated in 2024 at the University of Michigan. And I got a master's in robotics.
Yep. I want you guys to tell me a little bit about yourselves, because tell me a little bit about yourselves, because basically the purpose of this show and the purpose of this episode is to help parents prepare their children to get a higher education. Now, from my understanding of it, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but if you major in the wrong thing in college, you might as well not even go and save your money. What are your thoughts on that? And what are those majors, if they do exist, that you're wasting your money going after?
My opinion of that is one of the best, some of the majors a lot of people do is like STEM and stuff like that. But there's a lot of other majors you can do.
Can you tell us what STEM is?
Science, technology, engineering, math. Right?
Yeah, that's
okay. That's right. Yeah, it's a buzzword, so it's don't always remember.
Okay.
But I mean, STEM is a good one. There's a lot of other ones you could do too that you can make a good living off of. It's really about what you make a degree. Not all, not fair to say all of them are useless or whatever. Sometimes you can make really good connections and stuff like that there. So it really depends, right?
Okay. So if I go to, let's say, Wayne State, and I major in graphic arts, am I doing well? Is it a good major?
Make a decent living with graphic arts. It depends what you do with it.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like it depends on what you want to do with that.
Yeah.
You could. I think with graphic arts, you can maybe, if I'm not mistaken, you can start designing like logos and stuff, and I think that's like a pretty good one to go into.
Right.
So in other words, if
Competitive
you
though.
but so in other words, if you're going to go into spend money on college, then you need to have a plan on what you can do, and you need also need to make sure that you know that major you're majoring in, that there's jobs in that major after you graduate.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, because it's probably not so easy to get a job in that major all the time, right?
Okay.
So I mean, I can see it with that, right? But if you do like STEM and stuff, there's always, well, I won't say always be jobs, but there's a lot more jobs and they pay a lot better, right?
Okay. Yeah. Now I do have some stats, and one of the stats I looked up was what people make, what different people make. When I looked at the stats, basically it said that men overwhelmingly make more than women across the board. The other thing I looked at was said that black men usually make about, on average, 75% of what white men make. And Asian men make about 120% more than white men. So I went back and tried to find the reasons why that disparity existed. And what I found was, what you talked about, STEM, was that Asian men and Asian women are overly represented in those majors. They're overly represented in that field in work. So basically what I'm looking at when I looked at those stats is that those seem to be the highest paying jobs that pay the most money, and that Asians are heavily invested in those types of majors and in those jobs, whereas we have a tendency to do other things, and we're not as heavily invested in STEM, and that we don't go to college as much. I'm not saying we don't have people in those majors, because evidently we do, because you two are in what they call STEM type majors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so basically, after you graduated, what was your ability, or how easy was it for you to find a job compared to others?
Well, I'll say for it took me, I want to say 6 months. And that was because when I graduated, I didn't have any prior engineering experience. So that was just a little hurdle to get over. But now that I'm at this job, I think it's definitely going to be smoother because I have the experience now. And yeah, really what I learned from this job right here is just a lot of, like what they teach you in school versus what you need to know before you go on the job world. It's a little bit jaded, I guess. I guess you can think of school, well, at least the STEM major, as kind of a filter.
Yeah.
Like, see if you can finish it or not. Because a lot of people don't finish STEM majors. I personally know some who don't finish STEM majors, so.
And that's going to be a question I ask, but first I'm going to find out from you, how was it, evidently did you go find a job first, or did you go straight into your master's?
So I'll give you a background about undergrad. So undergrad, I had a couple internships. I did a lot to make sure I get like internships. I had an internship from my freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and everything else, right? But the funny part about engineering is that, all the jobs are connected to the real world, right? So for me, getting a job right after college was kind of a scramble because I was in the 2 times I graduated from college in 2021 and 2024. 2021 was just a crazy year. We had COVID and everything else like that. So, a lot of people say the same thing. I said jobs weren't hiring, and then I had worked for my sophomore and junior. I worked for Boeing both summers. Actually, they flew me all the way out to Seattle, and I worked for them like as a.
Did they pay you?
Oh yeah, they paid well. They paid well.
If you don't mind me asking, what did they pay you as a student working at Boeing?
I got paid like $30 an hour.
As a student?
Just as a student, yeah.
Just as a student?
Yeah, just as a student, yeah.
For a summer job?
Yeah, for a summer job. Yeah, just as a student, I could make $30 an hour.
And that was how long ago?
That was 2019 and 2020. Yeah.
So it paid off well for you then, right?
Yeah, and that paid off well. And I, worked like 3 months, so you make a decent amount of money with internships. It's very rewarding to do, and a lot of those internships set you up to get the full job very easily. But just to give you like a bit of my story was, I went in there at the worst time possible. I went in there when they had COVID, and I don't know if you remember the 737 Maxes.
Yeah.
They crashed.
Crash, yes.
Yeah. So when it was time to, graduate, it was like no intern, not a single intern got return offers, and it was like laying off.
That's because they were laying off people, and because their planes weren't selling.
Yeah,
because they just crashed.
Exactly, and now they still somewhat struggling, right? So
right.
I mean, that's the thing you deal with that. You're dealing with like those type of world events and stuff like that. So, but I did end up finding another job here when I first graduated from undergrad, and that one paid pretty decently, right? And that one went off to just coming out of college. That one was like $85K, right? So
85,000 straight out of college.
Straight out of college, which is good. And I worked. It was remote, and I had to go into the office from time to time, but it was very much like, okay, this is a really good one.
So you mainly work with a remote job around 85,000 a year because of your major.
Yeah, because of my major, and circumstances kind of there too. That one was kind of special case, but this is why I was saying when you go to school, you might make connections, stuff like this. Because mine was like even a different case, because I worked in a research lab as an undergrad, because they allow undergrads to do that too. And I met somebody who was trying to start a company, like a startup, and I worked for them. And then I got into the whole like AI field that way, right? So it went from my case is a little bit strange, because I did mechanical engineering undergrad, but then I worked in this lab, and there was a lot of push to do like AI and machine learning stuff. So
you're working developing AI type programs?
Yeah. Yep. Back in undergrad, and then what happened was I had the role I had when I was fresh out of college wasn't so much like doing like the nitty gritty, like doing algorithms stuff. It was basically enabling algorithms and stuff like that. So I didn't like that. So I wanted to actually do the work. So that's why I went back to get my master's. And it was like in between, like only worked that job for like a year and a half. Then I went back to get my master's. And then after you graduate with my master's, that's when I was like in one of the worst job markets that they have.
Okay, so my next question is this. If I'm a parent and I want my child to do well, and I don't want them going to college and wasting money, and I want them to be able to make a good living better than what I was able to do, what classes should I make sure they take starting in elementary school or maybe starting in high school? I mean, when should we really focus on their education, from when they're little or when they get big? So if I'm in the 11th grade, should I now start taking college courses, or is it too late and I'm gonna have a hard time?
I feel like with that, okay, like you said, 11th grade. I don't think 11th grade is too late to take college courses, because college courses would be it's good either way. It just looks good on paper. But I would start with my background. So at Cass, we had like I guess we can call them majors. So my major was actually business and management. So I wasn't really doing that much math or science. I was really doing like the business classes. But when I got to college, I started like engineering technology, then I switched to mechanical engineering. So with that, I feel like I did kind of struggle a little bit, because I got to college and basically people knew like more math than me. Like they were better at math, and that kind of like, I feel like it kind of it made it harder. Definitely made it harder to.
So you had to work harder because you didn't get the proper preparation before you went to college.
Right. Correct.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah. So my background, saying I went to Cass with Immanuel here too. We had slightly different paths. I did our curriculum thing was, I think I did like science and arts, but the gist of it was I took like most of the AP classes and stuff like that. Took all the way to BC Calc and everything. So I ended up getting a couple college credits when I went to school. One thing about my school is a little bit different, right? So even with like all that prep, it's still like I still struggled a lot.
Because you were at MIT though, right?
Yeah, so that's the difference, right? So
so how did you pay for MIT?
Oh, MIT was free. So the way it works is
now you got to explain. How did you get in MIT for free?
Well, MIT is need based. So if your parents don't make a certain amount of money per year, everything's paid for, right? Room and board, tuition, everything, right? So it's not like by grades. If you get in, they're like, oh, he's smart.
So if I'm a kid or if I'm a parent and I don't make a lot of money, then I should not give up on the idea that my kids can go to college.
Yeah, no, I mean, he can get a scholarship for sure. I mean, they got a lot of money for kids who come from like, economic challenged background.
Yeah. But do you have to have a certain GPA or a certain level of?
They want high. You have to have high test scores, high GPA.
When you say test scores, are you talking about those ACT, standardized tests?
Yeah, ACT, SAT, all those tests, right? So you gotta have those, or it's gonna be hard. I mean, there's still scholarships out there, but the easiest way to get like full rides and stuff like that is get really high scores. Even with me, when I was in CAS, by the time I graduated, I got full ride to like basically a lot of schools. I got full ride to Wayne State, Michigan State, U of M, and MIT. But that's because I had like high scores and like.
What were your scores?
I had like I had 34 on the ACT.
Oh, first one ACT.
Yeah.
What about the SAT?
SAT, I didn't do as well on the SAT. I had like I'm more focused on the ACT more. Like a 1360 on the SAT. Okay. But they care about either or. Like it doesn't matter.
Okay. It doesn't matter as long as you get good scores on one of them.
Exactly.
So did you take the test just the one time, or did you take it several times? Did you start off taking the test? Because I know with my grandkids, my daughter-in-law, she's homeschooling, so she has her kids take the standardized test every year, and I think they're like in 98, 99 percentile ranking right now on the standardized test. So they're hoping they can get scholarships.
Yeah, probably will get a scholarship. I would say for a standardized test, it means different for different people, right? People come with different backgrounds before they take those tests. There's some kids who are like really, really advanced. So by the time they're like, freshmen, sophomores in high school, they're already ready to start preparing for those tests. Then there's people who don't even know enough math until senior year, and it's kind of hard to take the test. So it really depends on where you're at. But the number one thing is a lot of people do is they do like a whole bunch of practice tests. Okay. And then some people just come from really good schools, so they only take it once and they just get high scores and they go about their day. I mean, it's different for different people.
Okay. Right? So can I assume that if I had a high GPA in high school that I'm gonna do well in college?
Not necessarily.
Explain.
Some people. Different schools have different rigor, right? Different high schools have different rigor. So if you went to a high school that wasn't that good, but you have straight A's, and you went to college, especially if you didn't take like any AP classes or anything like that, and you're trying to do STEM, then maybe not. I don't know. If you do like other majors, you might still do well. But if like we're talking about if you want to do like STEM and math and stuff like that, it's really about like what you took in high school rather than what your GPA was, right? So if somebody got a lower GPA than you, but they've taken harder math classes, they're going to do better. Math and science class, they're going to do better than you.
Now, you mentioned that you didn't take that much math in high school.
I didn't take that much math or physics. It was because we didn't even have a physics teacher our 11th grade year. Yeah, we didn't have a physics teacher or really a chemistry teacher at that. So really just those physics and chemistry classes were definitely something else.
So that made it harder for you?
It definitely did. Especially with physics, because physics is like calculus and math. So I think the highest calculus I took was probably like pre-calc when I got, like it would equate to pre-calc in college. Like it was like honors calculus or something like that.
So what classes would you recommend a person start? If my child is going to 8th grade, what math class should they be in?
8th grade, what is that? I feel like
that's the year before high school.
Year before high school.
Yeah. So you talking about algebra?
It may be algebra 1 or algebra 2 because I know in high school you want to at least like finish off taking calculus BC, right? Calc 2. Okay. I think that sets you up really good.
So which means that if I'm a parent and I'm listening to this, or if I'm another kid listening to this, and I want to do what you did, then I need to go make sure that I'm on the trajectory so that my 8th grade year in middle school, I'm taking algebra 1 or algebra 2.
Algebra 1 is what people say. People don't take algebra 2 until high school. But yeah.
Okay, so at least algebra 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then yes, my freshman year in high school, what classes should I be in?
So at least for CAS, they had like 2 tracks to start taking calculus by
11th grade year, right?
No, it's all like senior year. So people usually have like either like some accelerated algebra class where they have like you go there and you talk to the teachers and they'll tell you how to do the tracks. But just make sure you set them on the track to do it right. Either like for CAS it was like accelerated algebra, and then some people came in with doing geometry on 9th grade year. So it really, again, it's about the school you go to, and
so in other words, I need to look for a school that's going to let my kid excel in mathematics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In science. And
Yeah.
so when I pick a high school for my kid to go to, make sure that they choose a high school that has accelerated programs that will allow them to get ahead of their competition.
Yes. If you serious about getting your kid to do STEM and everything, make sure the high school has, at least AB calculus at least. You know what I'm saying?
Like a minimum AB.
Yeah, at minimum, like at least have AB or have some type of really good like physics and stuff like that. Because that's the class that you're going to struggle with. That's going to weed you out. Is really the math classes and the physics classes. Yeah, the first like year. But I feel like once you get past like that first year, it gets better.
Yeah, because you get used to it.
Yeah. But that first year is like the hardest year. So you want to make sure like
you say your first year of high school or your first year of college?
College.
First year of college.
College is your hardest year.
That's your hardest year?
Yeah. Because they're weeding you out, right?
Okay.
With the math, with the introductory math and physics classes. So that's what I would recommend.
Sorry, say it again?
That's what I would recommend if you're choosing high schools and stuff, right? Which means go backwards one
Is
step.
that why you guys chose CAS, or just kind of happened to get into CAS, but it's kind of chosen for you?
Well, for me, it was like either CAS or Renaissance was the two schools.
Yeah.
I chose CAS because I like CAS.
Yeah, all my friends were going to CAS.
Yeah, and then CAS and Renaissance both had that type of curriculum, so it was like
So both Renaissance and CAS would be good high schools to go to?
yeah,
they would.
in Detroit. Yeah, I think
If you're in Detroit.
yeah.
Now, if I'm not in one of those schools, or I'm unfortunate enough where I can't get into a school that has a lot of math and science, what can I do on the outside of that in order to make sure I'm still prepared to take those tests and to do well?
Well, I feel like at that point you would have to like kind of like they have like sources online where you can practice that stuff like Khan Academy, where you could practice like physics and math, and I believe they also have like standardized test practice on Khan Academy.
Yeah, they got all that.
Yeah.
So you got Khan Academy resources, but even if you don't do the Khan Academy stuff, you just got to understand that when you go to college, you're gonna be behind. You're gonna struggle that first.
Yeah, but see, on a lot of us, if I can't get that academic scholarship, then I may not be going. Because, all right, what is the average cost of college?
We got community college too, right?
Right. What's the average cost of a college, 4-year college?
So I looked it up. It's $30,000 a year.
A year or a semester?
Well, my fault. Semester. Yeah.
For in-state though.
In-state.
So if I
go
go
to U of M, yeah, it's like $30,000.
But if I go outside the state, it's higher?
Yes, way higher.
Okay, so I'm looking at $30,000 a semester.
Mm-hmm.
How many semesters in a year?
2 semesters.
So that's 60,000. Well, I think we talked about this a little bit before earlier. That's 60,000 a year, which comes to about $240,000 for the average college education.
Yeah.
And you're telling the students right now, if you're listening, or parents if they're listening, that don't give up on college because it's still obtainable, but you have to start early and make sure that your kid is on one of those tracks where they will be doing well, score high on standardized tests, and make sure they go to schools that offer the right classes.
Yep. I would say that was good general information. And if you still don't get the scholarship, don't be afraid to go to community college.
Okay, and then tell me about the community college path.
Well, we go to community college is more affordable, right? So you would use your first 2 years to do like the class we talked about, your introductory classes. And then after those introductory classes, after 2 years, you transfer into a 4-year university. And
Saves some money that way.
Saves money that way.
Now that $30,000, does that pay for living on campus?
No, that's tuition.
Yeah.
That's just tuition.
That's just tuition. That's just tuition.
So room and board goes higher.
Yes. Room and board goes higher. So college is very expensive, right? So, I mean, one of the biggest things on the podcast for is to tell people, like, if you go to well, number one message, if you go and you waste money, you're gonna waste a lot of money. You're gonna be with like
a lot of debt
with a degree that doesn't pay much. Right. So it's not like everybody has like passions and stuff like that, which is fine. It's just you got to be more strategic these days with college because it's so expensive. Right.
Okay.
So I would say that's like a number one thing I would say about all that.
So in other words, if you're going to college, have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan.
Just don't say I'm going to college because I'm going to college because it sounds good.
Yeah. And I know people who's done that, still came out well, but they somehow was able to get scholarships, right? So at least if you're going to go to have fun, at least go on some type of scholarship that is not going to break the bank, right? I actually have a friend right now. He went to Michigan State, and I don't even know what degree he got, but he tells me he for sure never used his degree. But he liked college. It was a good experience. And now he's working at Quicken Loans, making good money, being a salesman. So, I don't see nothing wrong with going to college if that's what your goals are. It's just make sure you understand the consequences and what you're paying for if you do something like that.
So, in other words, if you go to college, make sure that you finish. Don't go there and flunk out.
Well, my thing is, I'm saying if you want to go to college, make sure you understand the financial implications of college.
Okay, so if I'm a parent and my kid ain't serious, then I shouldn't pay for them to go to college.
I mean, that's fair. That's how you. If that's
I'm asking because you like it because I'm looking at it like this. Okay, if I'm taking $60,000 a year to go to school, and I'm not choosing a major that I can find a job in, and I'm not serious about my classes. Like for example, what are the top 10 reasons people flunk out? Right. I mean, if I want to spend that kind of money, I don't want to flunk out. Right. So, what are some of the reasons you found that people flunk out of college?
Low grades is one.
But why? Why do they end up with low grades? What's the real thing? Is it because you're prepared or they're just not studying?
Well, I feel
Mix
like
of both.
Yeah, and also, see, the thing about college is you have a lot of more freedom than what you did like before college. I guess like at least for me, like I had a lot more freedom. Like it was basically you have to take like accountability, responsibility. And if that could be a lot for some people if they, basically didn't have to do that until it's.
So in other words, your mom and dad didn't wake you up and tell you to go to class.
No.
Yeah. and the teachers don't care if you're skipping.
They don't.
Unlike high school,
they're not going to call your parents.
They're not going to say, I don't care.
They just flunk you.
Yeah, they will.
Some of them don't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them more focused on research than
teaching.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care. Okay, so basically.
Some of them don't care though, but there's some that don't care.
So basically, if a kid is not mentally or prepared to take on that responsibility, they should probably go to what?
They should probably do something else,
or just do something else altogether.
Yeah. I mean, community college is a good way, to ease yourself in because it should be. I don't know for sure, but it might be a little bit easier. You're still at home, so you could be a little bit more focused instead of being on a college campus. But maybe community college might be better, depending on who you are. Right. So it all depends. A lot of this is you gotta kind of have, like you said, have a plan and know who you are, and know what your cards are and what your situation is, and go from there. Really, it's not like one shoe fits all.
Now, I was looking at some of the reasons why people flunked out. One of them sounded like it was a false sense of security due to high grades in high school. And I think I asked you earlier, you said that high grades in high school does not necessarily equate to high grades in college.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Okay. What about people's expectations when they go?
What do you mean by expectations?
Students' expectation, what they think they can do. Have you found that most people who go to college, their expectations on what they can do and how well they can do are realistic, or are they kind of like in la la land?
Oh, I actually have talked to. So I used to coach like this robotics team in high school, and I actually was talking to some of the kids about college they want to go to, majors they want to do, and there are some like unrealistic expectations. Because you don't really, as a high school student, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into until you're there, right? Some people want to triple major in some craziness, or want to do like so many classes at one time, burn yourself out and stuff like that. So that's one way you can for college, you just don't understand what you can and can't handle. There's people when I went to school, there was people who could take 4, 5, 6 technical classes in one semester. Me personally, I can only take 3. If I tried to take more than 3, I was gonna burn out, right? So again, it's more like a case by case basis and kind of figuring out what you can and can't do.
So now, did both you guys finish it in 4 years, or did it take longer?
No, I actually finished in 6 years. So during that time, I believe it was around COVID. Everybody, I guess the whole world stopped during COVID, but I was going through a lot of personal stuff. A lot of mental stuff, and I feel like that mental aspect is really a big thing when you go to college too. So, but I recovered and got back up. I ended up, finishing out my last year, and that took a big relief off of my shoulders.
So it's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It is definitely a lot of pressure.
Anything parents can do to help their kids with their pressure, or anything that they can any signs that they need to look for in their kids to find out if they're under a lot of pressure?
Okay, I feel like what maybe parents can do, they can, I don't know, I guess talk to their kids, but it's kind of hard because the kid will have to, have to be reciprocating. Like they will have to open up, right?
And do most kids open up, or do they try to hide it?
It depends.
It depends on the kid, really. Me personally, I definitely wouldn't open up as much back and during that time.
Is that a bad thing?
Yes and no. It was a bad thing because you can't. Me personally, I feel like I can't like shoulder everything. I guess if that makes sense, but I guess the good aspect of it was like that's just how I am. I don't know how to explain it. Like I don't know what other kids are like. It's really dependent on the kid, but that plays back into the mental health aspect because I don't know. I feel like it was just a lot. Like it was overwhelming. Like a lot of.
And when you felt overwhelmed, did you have anybody you can turn to, or you just kind of
I did have people to turn to. I just didn't. I really didn't.
So what would you recommend? What would you tell other students who are in your situation to find someone that they can talk to?
Definitely find someone that you could talk to. Find someone that you could be open, honest, and transparent with, and someone you could vent to, because I feel like that's really more important than everything, really. Because if your mind is not in the right place, would
you say a lot of students have that issue? They need to try to open up, or is anything a mother or father can do to help their kids open up to them, or is that pretty much just on the kid to open up?
Yeah, that's a whole other topic, but I feel like it's like a person by person basis.
It's a person by person
basis. Plus, some people don't want to talk to their parents about everything. So what they do have sometimes at school is like mental health services and stuff. Okay. I recommend everybody go to, if you're up there and like figure out your resources and stuff, because they do have resources for students to go to, therapy and mental health and everything. It's important to keep up with yourself and keep up with your mental health.
Because I know when I was in school, it was mostly Asian kids. When they started getting bad grades, a lot of them committed suicide. Not a lot of them, but I remember my senior year, 3 students who had killed themselves because they felt they were not making the grade.
Yeah. That happens. That definitely happens.
Did it happen where you were at?
It definitely has happened where I'm at. I don't know anybody. Actually, I do know somebody who tried to commit suicide. Actually, when I was up there, I just thought about that. They did. Mm-hmm. Their life was falling apart. They was feeling. Took them like 6 years to graduate. I know a couple people who deal with like mental health issues. So mental health is real in college. Mm-hmm. And these are, again, I'm talking even where I went. These people were like star students in high school, really high grades and stuff. Even they struggle, and they're humans and stuff too, right? So it's definitely a thing, and you have to just remind yourself they do have help up there, and just don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out. Yeah.
Reach out. Okay, so then I am a student. I'm going that they need to make sure that they may be aware and just don't sit back and be a suffering Susan and just go through stuff, because what happens is you may end up being one of those people who do that.
Yeah, and it will affect your studies, and you will fall from behind.
So basically, when you find yourself in a situation, if you don't properly handle it or get the help you really need, then it will actually adversely affect your ability to graduate.
Of course,
it will.
Of course.
Okay. So, have you guys ever had to deal with isolation there when you were in college?
What do you mean by isolation?
Right. For example, when I went to Michigan State, there wasn't a whole lot of blacks or other minorities in my major. And I remember one day when I walked into, we had gotten our computer science assignment, and we used to all run over to the computer building where they had the machines where you can type in. And back then we had cards, right? And we had this big, huge table that all the students in my class would sit at, and they would discuss the assignment. When I walked in the room and sat down, the whole table got quiet. When I got up and left, they started talking again.
Yeah.
And they would share back and forth. But anytime I sat down at the table, I was not able to become part of that group so that I could work within that area. So I found myself always off to the side working by myself. And I was pretty much isolated from other people in my major.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about this. So for me, in undergrad, it was like wasn't like that bad. Cause some of my closest friends were like black people and stuff like that, and it was kind of like and then we had some in the same class. Again, I'm in school with a whole bunch of like really really smart people. So a lot of them do STEM, and so they were just like in the same class with me because they just we other smart black people. I mean, it wasn't that many black people up there in the first place. This was like 6% black when I was there, but
usually when I saw a black person, I would like.
Well, that is an effect, right? It's kind of like when I was in high school, like mostly everybody's black, so like you don't really think about it. But once I left, it's like, oh, you black, I'm black, we friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friends. No questions asked.
No questions asked. We're just glad to see each other.
Yeah, you kind of conquer it. I mean, this is not all black people, but this is how I was. We were around black people.
Right.
So undergrad, it was kind of like that. And at one point, got to undergrad. Some of my friends started struggling in school. Mm-hmm. So I like me. I know you asked earlier how long did it take. It took me 4 years to graduate. Mm-hmm. And some of my friends, it took them like a little bit longer to graduate. So it was at one point I started pulling ahead of them in certain of my classes. Mm-hmm. And so they were like they did mechanical engineering too, but they fell behind. So they wasn't like taking the same classes I was taking at one point. Mm-hmm. And then they get to that point where, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. This is a great thing at college. I ended up making friends with people, other races. I mean, I was doing that regardless, right?
Right.
And that's how it was. It'll be like, I had a whole bunch of, Asian and white friends or whatever that I do homework with, and then when it was time to like, hang out and chill, I was with my black friends, right? So it was like Monday through Friday, I'm with, non-black people, and then I'm with, my friends in the weekends. I mean, it's kind of like that now when I like go to work, right? I don't ever see any black people during work, Monday through Friday. Then weekends that I'm around like my friends, and then when I went to my master's, it was even worse than undergrad in terms of like ratio, right? Like you would think, because U of M is it's like huge school,
right?
It's huge. But when I went to go get my master's, my program was like literally only 2 black people. There's only 2 of us, and then I came in as a master's student, and the other dude came in as a PhD student. And so within the whole building,
just the 2 of you.
Well, no, in the whole building there was other PhD students,
right?
So it was like 8 of us.
Was it
in total? It was like 8 of us in total. We all knew each other. We all like everybody knew each other. It was like, hey, how you doing, man? They just came up and talked to me just because I was black. But there's only 8 of us. Like when is that small of a number? Mm-hmm. Of course it's gonna be like that. And in my classes, I'll literally be the only black person in my class, especially my master's. Literally the only black person in my classes. Right. So, but at that point, by the time I got to my master's, it was just like, this is another day in office for me. You get used to it. Mm-hmm. Same thing when I go to work. It's like, I don't ever see black people.
I know when I graduated in computer science from Michigan State, there was 3 of us.
Yeah.
And the one young lady, Sharon, I think she went to work for Burroughs. And I forgot where J-Rob went, but it was just us 3. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I mean, I remember my senior year, and I saw some freshmen, black kids that were inside of computer science. And one of them go, oh, wow, man, guess what? Look at all this. And they had some of my old tests and some of my old programs. Man, this is like the bomb. And I didn't have the heart to say, yeah, I remember that. Because I remember that a friend of mine, he was in charge of minority students of engineering. He came to me and said, hey, Butch, man, we don't have any materials at all for computer science for the guys coming up, computer science that they can study from. And so I went back and I found all my old tests, all my old programs and that kind of stuff, and I gave it to him. And it helped, right? But I don't know what happened after I left, if there's some more students that made it up that high and graduated or not.
Oh, yeah, of course, about Michigan State, of course.
Yeah, so it was. So I'm hoping that they did, but it was, yeah, but you're right. When I saw another black person, we were instant friends. Instant. And I remember people, when I would leave school and I would get back on the streets, I'll get back home. They said, well, black people don't ever hang together. We like claws or crabs in a barrel. But that was not my experience. Yeah. When I ran into a person that was there, we helped each other, because if we didn't help each other, none of us was going to graduate, right?
Yeah.
So I remember pulling all-nighters, and we would, hey, man, I got a bug in my program. Can you help me debug it, right? Yeah. And we would look at each other's programs and help debug each other's programs, because if we didn't do it, nobody else was going to help us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was your experience or not.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, not so much with the school stuff because I made a whole bunch of friends
Right.
outside of black people when it came when it was time to do school and whatever. I was really good at that networking,
Right.
talking to people outside of black people.
Right.
But in terms of like when it was time to like hang out and chill, I was mostly on the weekends I hang out with black people.
Right.
So
Right.
that's been my experience.
Because that's what you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up around. I went to
Right.
was in Detroit all my life.
Right.
I used to
Exactly.
hang around black people, right? So, but yeah, I mean that's just how it is, right?
So basically, what I'm hearing then, and if I get this correctly, we have the ability, we have the resources, but what it would take on the student's part is a commitment, and they need to be able to focus on what they really want to do. If they want to get those degrees, if they want to get majors in STEM and be able to come out and make those dollars and and live that lifestyle, they need to be committed, right? And they need to be ready to put in the work.
Yeah, you gonna have to put in the work. Yeah.
And that work starts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I wait till I'm in 11th grade and then start trying to take those courses, it's almost too late, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
So basically, if I want my child to do well in STEM type majors, the ones that pay, that we know that my child can come out and make good money and have a good life. I need to start when they're little, reading, writing, especially the arithmetic and the sciences, and inundate them with it so that it becomes second nature.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that about right?
Yeah, you want to start them young. And start on the path young.
Right. Because I remember once you mentioned something about tutoring. Did you have a lot of tutoring and when you were coming up?
When I came up, I actually had a lot of tutoring. My brother is over there, which is funny. I say this story all the time. He didn't do as well in especially like kindergarten, first grade, and elementary school. So funny enough, I was like, he's a year older than me. So when he would be forced to go to like tutoring, they'd take me to tutoring too.
So you sat in on his.
I had to go to tutoring regardless. So the funny part about tutoring, and this is a recommendation too for parents, it's all because your child is doing really well in school doesn't mean he can't go to tutoring, because what they do at tutoring, if you say for instance you're a first grader, but you're getting all A's and you're really smart, they're not going to just have you keep doing first grade work. They're just going to move you ahead and make you do second grade work, third grade work, and so on and so forth. So then the way education works is education really is it has like a snowballing effect.
Okay.
So at first, that little bit that you're doing, you get ahead a little bit, and then it snowballs, and next thing you notice, you're what they would think like such a genius, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like what happened to me. I was in tutoring a lot before I got to high school because, that's how it worked, right?
But what it did though, it put you in a position where you were able to get and qualify for those scholarships because you had done that, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of tutoring that necessarily I didn't like have to do, but I was like in tutoring. Like even when I was in high school, before I went off to MIT, they had like two summer classes. I had 1 year, it was my my junior year, like right after junior year. I got into one of their summer programs, and so I was in summer school the whole time, and I was taking like calculus and everything else. And then my senior year, same thing happened. I took a whole bunch of like college classes and everything else. But these, I'm still doing well in school, but I'm still in school in the summer, right?
Right.
And so that snowballed, and then when I got to...
So basically, even though, and you did not need to, but even though you were getting good grades and you were doing well in school, you were still in summer school learning even more.
Exactly.
And you're saying basically what it compounded.
It compounds.
And then what happened was when you came time to take that standardized test, you were scoring higher than everybody else because you knew more because you put more time into your studying.
That was before 11th and 12th grade, but yeah.
By the time
11th and 12th grade happened, it's wraps.
So basically you're saying that happened at the younger ages.
Well,
and it carried forward.
It carried forward. Like even when I was and I think middle school they had like they have a lot of these programs too. Right. They had this thing called like math corps that I went to, like 6th, 7th grade, which they was doing a lot of that type of work, and so that stuff eventually like snowballs over time, and it does a lot to like help you before you get to high school. So a lot of those like summer programs and everything else keep you being active, especially if it's academic, will like pitch you ahead.
So did you have the same amount of tutoring coming up?
Actually, I did not. I didn't have really any tutoring. I didn't do any math corp. I was just in high school. Yeah, I didn't do any tutoring. None of the, I guess, extracurriculars as far as that. I feel like maybe I did like academic games, but I didn't continue that into high school.
So do you think it would have helped you and made it easier for you if you had?
Yes, but after I had that business curriculum, it was gonna be, because there was virtually no way to get into like a chem bio versus business, unfortunately, at that time. So I was, stuck with the business classes, but I feel like if I did start off tutoring and then got into like a different curriculum, I would have been better off going into college. I would have been better prepared.
Yeah. So then whose responsibility is it to make sure their kids are in that environment? The parents?
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So because the kid gonna be a kid. The kid gonna fight against it, but you don't give him a choice, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means, so it really is that, like I started off with that scripture, it really is the parent's responsibility to make sure that they point their kid in that direction and put the kid in that environment so that they can excel, right?
Yeah.
But when they get to college, now it's on the kid to make sure that they do what's necessary in order to make sure they succeed, which means that as a parent, you need to start telling your kid, well, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to do. This is what I expect. If you start building those expectations in that child at a young age. Yeah. Now, all right. I don't want to get too bad with this, but as a people, I think we emphasize sports more than we do academics, especially with our young men. I don't see parents pushing on their sons to do as well in school as they do on the basketball court or the football field. I think the kids get more glory for that than they do anything else. And I know that makes a difference with boys, right? And I'm not even sure if you can tell me this, if this is true or not, that we put a high value on our sons who are achieving academically as we do on our sons who achieve in different ways, like in sports or something like that. I mean, is that true? Are we not emphasizing education enough with our young men? Because we got a lot more women who go to college than we do men. Why is that?
That's a whole different conversation. Yeah.
I mean, but do we need to emphasize it and put it on our sons right now while they're little, saying you are going to college, you will do well. Don't bring these bad grades home. I mean, and then keep them in tutoring all summer if we have to. I mean, do we need to really push our young men in that direction and not push them into sports?
So I'm gonna just specifically only talk about dudes with this one. So with the young men, my opinion of like the sports versus education thing is, you should have a balance. You should have a balance with that type of stuff. I'm not saying you shouldn't play sports. I'm not saying like educate. Well, I'm not saying even education or everything, but I would say my opinion of sports is that some people are just not meant to play pro sports. If you're not going to play like, professional sports, or you don't think you'll make it to the NBA or something like that, you should have your academics over your sports. Now, there's a lot of smart people who do both. There's some athletes who are really smart. Well,
my son did that, my youngest son, and because I asked him one day, because he had an opportunity where Scout had contacted him and said, hey, I need you to go to the pro day when the football players all get there and they whatever. He never showed up, right? So I asked him, I said, well, why did you go? He says, because Daddy, my last game in high school, I was through with football. I said, well, then why did you play inside college? Because it paid the bills.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And ain't nothing wrong with it, because he had a plan. He played to get his bills paid so that he can get an education. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if a kid does have that ability, then he should use it to his advantage.
Yeah.
But keep the academics there, because if he don't, if he gets hurt, one injury, one game, then he has nothing. So he needs to keep that academics as high up there as whatever sport he's playing.
Yeah, as high as possible.
As high as possible.
You know, but sports, I even say playing a sport will get you an advantage too, right?
Yeah, it does.
So if you're really good at sports,
connections and get you money.
Scholarships.
Scholarships.
Yeah. I mean, I even say like, say if you wanted to go like MIT for example,
right.
You were like a D3, D2 level athlete, but you also had really good like testing scores. What's funny enough is like you'll probably have a higher chance of almost anybody else getting there if you're good at basketball, but you also have like really high ACT and ACT scores.
Okay,
right?
so if I'm a basketball player and I know I'm good, but I'm not Michigan State good, but I'm good enough to play D2, D3, then I should look at maybe trying to go to MIT if my grades are good enough.
Yeah, if your grades and ACT scores, of course.
Right. So let's say if what should my ACT score be if I want to get into? Let's say you went to Central, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of ACT score do I need to get into the Central and
I mean, they got the averages online, right?
They do.
So yeah.
Off the top of my head, I think it was like 22, 21 maybe.
Okay. What about MIT?
The average is like a 34. I mean, it's a competitive school, right? But it ranges. Like they let people from all types of.
So if I'm a good athlete and then maybe what I need to do is not look at the MAC, but maybe I need to do look at some of these other schools like a Harvard or MIT, some of these other schools.
It's all niche. I mean, this is
right. But I'm saying though, if my grades and my test scores are high enough, rather than just going someplace to play in D2, maybe try to get in one of those. Because face it, if I got connections at MIT versus connections at some other school, right? Aren't those connections better if I'm coming out of a school like that?
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, like I said, those case by case examples.
Case by
case. I mean, the number one thing is like what you do with what you have. Okay. And even somewhere like, I mean, when you get in this conversation, it's very like complex conversation because like even like if you say you want to go to Harvard to play basketball, that's a D1 school, so you still have to be good. And then some people, I mean, a lot of kids who are playing D1 think they might make it to the league, right? Like most of them think that. I don't know why you would want to play. I mean, this is me personally outside looking in,
right?
But I don't know why you want to go play for a D1 school if you don't think you'll make it.
Well, be honest about it. I looked at some of the stats.
Yeah.
It's easier to make $1 million working than it is trying to do it via sports.
Yeah, but
you get more. Yeah. You got more millionaires that made it out of 401k, or I call them 401k millionaires.
Yeah,
because they went got a job and they started investing in their 401k from get go with the matching funds, the whole 9 yards. And by the time they retired, they're living better retired than they were when they were working because that money compounded, that money grew. Right, can't go wrong with that. And then the person who played sports, a lot of them, I know I ran into some, they were like, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I remember back in the good old days, but they back on the street. They ain't got no money.
But to be realistic, I mean, I can just look, I mean, just some empathy, right?
Right.
If I was good enough to go, D1, I'm going to shoot to make it to the NBA, right? Like most people don't even get that small chance to make it to there. Right. We know the pools get smaller and smaller, but that's just...
Yeah, but shouldn't you also have a backup plan?
I agree with that. Right? You should.
You should have a backup plan.
You should.
And if you're that good, does it really matter what school you're at? If you're playing, if you're starting and you're playing,
I mean, if you
won't they find you anyway?
They do find you.
They'll find you. They'll find you because they got people. That's their job is to go out and find these people. A diamond in the rough, right?
Yeah. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right, another whole nother. You're right, but so they'll find you.
Duke, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really you on like a really powerful team like Zion Williams when he went to Duke. I mean, it's kind of like it's a whole different conversation. But to be fair, if I'm a D1 player, I'm gonna think, I might make it to the league, right? So
right, but you should have a backup plan.
You should have a backup plan,
right? Because in case you don't,
right?
Okay. So I went in and I pulled some salaries for different majors. All right, so I'm looking at a civil engineering, and it says the salary range is $123,000. The entry level jobs are civil engineering, field engineering, or structural engineering. Right, aerospace engineering, $136,000. They come in as an aerospace engineer and they work their way up either a maintenance engineer or a mechanical engineer. and they start off there, and then they go and end up usually around 136,000 at the top of their career. Pharmaceutical or pharmacology, 142,000. You're looking at being a pharmacist, or being a pharmaceutical engineer, a biomedical scientist, or a medical research scientist, and you end up there. Medical doctors, they range anywhere from 110,000 to 520,000. Now you're looking at those, but these are all STEM, right?
Yeah,
you got to have STEM for these. So basically, you're looking at, and this is what I was saying, that a lot of the Asians, those are the fields they go into, and that's why they're up at the top when it comes to salaries.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying we don't, because, correct me if I'm wrong, don't we have a lot of people who try it but don't make it?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who try who don't make it.
But what are the reasons for the lack of success?
In terms of being an engineer, I mean, it's usually people.
Or in terms of STEM in general.
It's literally the first year.
Yeah,
People drop out because of the first year. They can't pass the first couple of math classes.
So basically, we as a people, black people, we usually fall out that first year because of math.
Well, most people fall out that first year. Not
Most
just
people, not, but most
That's
people.
just reality.
Period.
Still, most people are going to fall out that first year.
So basically, if I want to increase my child's chances of making it past that first year, I need to load as much math and science on them as possible that they can possibly get before they get to college.
Yeah, I mean that's the easiest way. Yeah,
Easiest way.
yeah.
So if I'm taking BC Calc, that increases my chances of surviving that first year.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay.
I mean, once you get past the first year, you basically are. I wouldn't say smooth. I mean, still, classes get harder, but you're used to it.
You get used to the workload,
right? And you have like a foundation at that point.
So, in other words, if what I'm hearing you say is that you need to prepare your child so that your child knows how to study, and that they can handle that increased load of work that they're going to get their freshman year.
Yeah,
right.
And I'm saying you mentioned this earlier, how like what can parents do to like help their kids?
Well, I was about to ask you guys before we wrapped up, what can you tell parents and tell other students that they need to do to help them ensure that they're successful going on, and I know that ranges anywhere from classes to mental health to being able to realize that you're going to have to learn how to go sleepless nights. So, I mean, what would you tell them at where you are now? Was it worth the what you had to go through to get to where you are now? Was it worth it?
Oh yeah, it's 100% worth
it. Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
But I would say if I give one-on-one, I give advice for parents and for students. Advice I would give for parents is like, if you did everything you could for your child, and then he's in college trying to do, he or she is in college trying to do like any kind of STEM stuff, or college in general. If it's a time to check in, is really like that first year. It's really that first year, right? Like that's the pivotal year that's gonna make or break people typically. And I say it's the first year because what tends to happen is they might mess around that first year, and their year two is really like year one, right? So really, like, if it's a time to check on people and
and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do,
it's that first year.
That first year, okay.
And then in terms of students, what I would say about students is that even if you do well in high school, you gotta look at college as like the next,
Okay, so in other words.
So if I had to give advice to both like parents and students, I'll start with the parents. My number one advice I'll give to parents is like, if it's a time to check up on your like kid or your son or daughter, is that first year. Cause that's the year that people mess up a lot, they fail. That's the year that's going to get them behind. For some people, their year two is their first year, right? So if you want to avoid like a lot of the missteps of college and making sure people graduate and do well, especially if you're going to do the STEM stuff, is make sure they're doing really well that first year. And then year 2 or 3, you just like push ahead and just let them do their own thing. So by then they'll be fine. But year one is it's not the hardest year academically, but that's the hardest year to transition, and that's the year that people like drop out and like not do well, right? That's the transition. That's the transition. That's the year that's going to decide whether or not you actually
succeed or not,
do STEM or not, right? Like,
okay.
That first year is what happens.
Manuel?
My advice for the parents, just a little piggyback off of his, that first year is important, but what I would say is just, your child is your child. Like, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Like, you can only do so much because that's just a whole nother, just a whole nother person. So, just love and care. Yeah, just.
They're 18, right?
They are. They're adults.
What you gonna tell them?
They're all adults. They are adults. But like I said, they're their own person. So, as long as you give them as long as you do your best, right, as a parent,
right,
or at least try to do your best, I think you should be good.
The other thing I would probably add to that is tell a kid not to be afraid to fail.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That I think that fear of failure is probably where most of the pressure comes from, and I really believe too, and I think you kind of touched on Immanuel, is that if you can't do it in 4, so what?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Move at the pace that's comfortable for you, that you can graduate in, right? So you don't have to come out in 4. That's something that, because when you're there, everything that you went through to get there is what you have to work with, and sometimes not everybody has the same opportunities to or the same circumstances. So you have to work with what you know, work with what you have. And if it takes you longer, that's fine. And there's no, the journey is important, but it's where you end up at the end of that journey is what counts. If you have to go a different route than someone else, that's fine. I know a guy who was a friend. He started off in college. It didn't work out for him. And he went into a trade school, and he's making more than what most college people are making. In fact, some trades pay like $62 an hour. Mm-hmm. But he found that his way after going to college was, you know what, college is not for me. Let me go to trade school. And he had a battle to fight to get there because he ran into all kinds of problems with people trying to stop him. But he was able to persevere. And that's the main thing, too, is that what people have to understand is that there's a certain amount of perseverance. Because I'm listening to both of you. The one thing I picked out was that you both persevered to what you had to do in order to get to where you got. And then from what you're telling me is that that journey you went on to get to where you are now was worth it. Mm-hmm. So that would be my recommendation to parents, is that help your kids achieve their goals by setting them on the right track. When they're younger and they can't make the right decisions for themselves, don't let them decide if they want to or don't want to go to school. You make them go, right? You make them realize the importance of it, and you get them to a point where they're used to working hard. I know with me, before I went to college, my idea of studying was flipping a book, do a couple of pages before I went in class, and then I took a test. So when I got to college, that didn't work. If I tried to flip a book a few minutes before I went to class, guess what? I was flunking that test. It didn't work like that. So get them used to working hard, and get them used to knowing that they have to sacrifice, and that one day that it will all be worth it. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank my guest, and I hope this is some information that you can use to help prepare yourself and your children to move forward in life. Thanks again. Bye now.